Good morning, family of God. I'd like to welcome you to New Beginnings Wesleyan Church online service. My name is Brian. This is Mary.
Good morning.
And we're the worship leaders here at New Beginnings Church, and we just want to welcome everybody for the announcements, prayer, and worship time. And like I said, this is New Beginnings Wesleyan Church, and we just want to welcome everybody. You know, for those who are looking to hear some good news. You know, we are a church that, you know, worship the Lord Jesus Christ. You know, and we just go by two simple rules. Not really rules, choices. We love God and we love people. And so today, you know, we just got a couple little bit announcements. And then we're going to go into prayer time. She's going to do the prayer because she's an awesome prayer warrior. You know, so the announcements. Tuesday night, Zoom. We have prayer. We have time to, you know, come online, you know, and we welcome everybody. If you need the address and the passwords, get a hold of Pastor Johnny or Pastor Chelsea, and they'll give you the necessary numbers to punch in and all that stuff too. Thursday night, we have Zoom Bible study. So, and what the Bible study is we pretty much go over what the message was in the previous Sunday in church. You know, and you know, everybody is able to give their input, their insight, and maybe even teach our pastor something new. You know, he's always open. You know, he's good about that. You know, he's not a know-it-all kind of guy, but you know, he's always open to learn more, and we want to hear from you as well. Now, the big thing, the last announcement of all, testimonies. We need we don't need them, but you know.
We love to hear you share your testimony.
Yes, yeah, testimonies. You know, we would love to be able to hear the day that you made that choice to start following God. You know, give a little account of what your life was like when before God. You know, and what was it that made you make that choice to just lay everything down and decide to follow Jesus. Testimonies, and we'd love to hear it. Don't be scared about it. You know, I mean, what's to be scared about? We're professing victory in the name of Jesus by our testimony. You know, so if you want to do your testimony, get a hold of Pastor Johnny or Pastor Chelsea. You know, I'm sure they can figure out some way to Zoom it, you know, or however you're comfortable giving your testimony. You know, and so remember, testimonies. We'd love to hear from them.
You can sit in your big comfy chair and get on Zoom and
drink your
own
chocolate
comfortable
milk.
Space.
Yeah. Drink chocolate milk.
Drink chocolate milk.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Chocolate cookies.
Yeah.
Some chocolate cookies.
And we're going to be moving into our prayer time now. You know, so you know, Mary's going to lead us in prayer before we get into the worship set. Amen. Hallelujah.
First of all, we want to thank God for bringing us here, waking us up in the morning. We have some deep prayers we need to be praying for some families. Greg Freer, we want to lift you up. And we want to lift your family up. We want to just comfort you during this time. We want to love on you. And let you know that we are praying for you. And I know that you love the Lord. And I don't know why I'm starting to cry, but I'm just, anyway. I want God to intervene in you, through you, for those family members that may not know the Lord. They can come to see the Lord through you. I want to lift up Kim, Ira and Dolores' daughter. She needs a liver transplant. She's having a big test coming August 25th. in Sacramento, San Francisco, sorry. And this could possibly put her way up there to be getting that liver in the next month.
Pray for us.
So we're praying that that is going to happen. We just pray comfort for Ira and Dolores through this. Give them strength, Father. And we want to pray for Pat Hearn through her therapy, that she can have a lot of relief and comfort in her legs. We want to pray for John McCullough, for his son John. He's got stage 4 cancer as well. We also want to pray for comfort for his family and for him to come to know the Lord if he doesn't know the Lord, and for somebody that doesn't know the Lord, they can know John and they can come to know the Lord through him. So may we come in prayer. Father, I just bring up Greg Freer to you, Father. I just ask you to comfort him and to comfort his family, Father. And I ask you to just comfort their family. Help them to see you in him, Father. I lift up Kim, that she gets this liver transplant, Father. That this big test in August brings her up to get that liver transplant within a month, Father. I know it's a possibility, but God, you are the possibility for her to have this. If that's your will, we proclaim it, and we know it to be true. And I just pray that Pat Hearn, as she goes through this therapy, that she has comfort, and this helps her to have some relief. I just pray for John McCullough, his son, John, that has stage 4 cancer. I just lift them up to you, Father. Ask you to intervene in their life. It's all about you, Father. Help them to just come to you, knowing that you have got them in your hands. Each and every person I've mentioned, you've got them in your hands, Father. We just thank you, Father, for each and every person. We thank you for this praise and worship team, Father. I just ask you to intervene in this praise and worship team, Father. Help those to just open their eyes to see you, Father, in this. I just pray for the pastor as he brings forth the message, Father, that you will give him the words to speak that we need to hear, Father. We just love on you today, and we give you all our worship, Father, and all our praise, because you're so worthy. There's so much going on in this world, Father, and we know you have got us in your hands. We thank you for the love that you give us, for the peace of mind that you give us. We cast all our fears upon you, Father, for you care for us, all our cares. In Jesus' name we pray. As we worship, we want to lift you up, Father. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you, Mary. Now we get to do what we love to do. We get to worship the name of Jesus. We get to worship not just the name, we get to worship our Savior. And show him that we just love to sing. The song we're going to be singing today is called Amazing Love. The second one is Heaven Came Down. We're going to finish it off with the Amazing Grace. Amen. friend. You're our Redeemer. You're the one that put his life up for my sin, for your sin. Came for us. And we invite you right now to sit on the throne of our hearts as we sing. You are my King. You are my King. You are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Sing it out. You are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Amazing love, how can you're my King who died for me. Amazing love, I know it's true. And it's my joy to honor you. Amazing love, how can it be that you're my King would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you. And all I do, I'll honor you. And all I do, I'll honor you. And all I do, I'll honor you. Heavenly Father, we thank you. Always honoring you, Lord, for what you do for us. We just thank you and we just give you the praise that you decided to come down from heaven, from your place in glory, to step in my place, to wash away my sins, not to atone for them, but to be the perfect sacrifice that was able to wash away the sins. The Word became flesh. Heaven came down to earth. What an awesome God to be able to step down from his place next to the Father, to come down and find out what it is to be human, to go through what we go through, but to also show us how to do it right. Amen. Wonderful day I will never forget. After I'd wander in darkness away, Jesus, my Savior, I met. Oh, Amen. Glory filled my soul when heaven came down. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You know the best part? What got us there? It was that amazing grace. The amazing grace. Yeah, we've done a couple hymns.
I know, I love them.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because, you know, when I'm singing these songs, I hear Brent singing them.
We miss you.
Yes. You know,
Becky.
yeah, man and Brent really missed, you know, worshiping the Lord music with y'all. You know, but you're right here with us because,
Yeah.
you know, when I'm singing them, I can hear your voice.
Yeah, I've
and
been
I
thinking
can
about
hear-
Brent.
I hear Nan dancing on those keys.
I
You
know.
And I wouldn't be able to play a lot of these hymnals if it wasn't for them, you know. So I just
Right.
want to thank you for putting the songs that, you know, stand the passing of time. Amen. It is by the amazing grace that we are saved.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to live, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace of you, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. Many dangers, toils, and snares I have already done. 'Cause grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we know that death can sing God's praise. And when we first begun, my chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. Let's praise God. Praise God.
Praise God. What a wonderful way to end that.
Amen.
Praise God.
Give him all the praise.
Praise God.
Yes.
Hallelujah. Man, I want to thank everybody for joining us today for our worship set of this service. You know, I love to worship with you. I love to sing Jesus with you. And thank you. I'm Brian. This is Mary. We want to thank you so much for worshiping with us. And at this time, we're going to pass this over to our pastor for the message for today. And have a great week, and God bless everybody.
We love you. We miss you.
Well, big thank you to Brian and Mary for just kicking off our service today with our announcements and the prayer time and just leading us in worship so faithfully for the last several months while we've been doing this shelter-in-place pandemic response and with our online services and in-person wearing masks. My name is Johnny Burke, and along with my wife Chelsea, we are your co-pastors of New Beginnings Wesleyan Church, and I am very happy that you're with us for this online service today on this very smoky outdoors day as we've just got fires going on all over California and has led to hazardous air quality. So we were doing an in-person service in the parking lot to do mitigation for COVID and keep people healthy, and then we get dirty air. So we are all online together this Sunday, and I'm glad you're with us, and looking forward to hopefully having the opportunity to be back in the parking lot next Sunday if the air clears up. So please continue to pray for the firefighters and what's going on. As you probably know, today we are going to be having some more thunder and lightning with very light rain, which is dangerous for fires as well. So let's pray for safety in that. I'd like to just jump into what we're looking at this morning. And if you've been with us for the last several months, for this entire year as a matter of fact, we have been talking about the concept of going deeper in our relationship with Jesus and our walk with Him. And so we've been asking some questions every week that are important for us to really be looking at, to be able to hear from God and respond to Him and grow in our relationship. And those questions have been pretty simple. Just 4 questions we ask every Sunday, every time we open up the Bible, every time we have a Bible study, or we do it as well. And they're simple. First one is this: what did I hear in the scriptures today? So today I'm going to be all in the book of 1 Kings, just a couple chapters of 1 Kings. Now there's 2 books in the Bible that say Kings in them. There's 1 Kings, which is 1 Kings, and 2 Kings, which is 2 Kings. So if you're in your Bible, you might want to turn to 1 Kings. We're going to be looking at between chapters 17 and 21, just so you know. That's where we're going to be today. And so if you hear a new verse or something new and exciting or a reminder of something, write down those verses so you can go back and check them out a little bit later. Second question is this: what did the Holy Spirit say to me while the pastor was speaking? So today I'm speaking, so we're talking about me, but we're not talking about what I'm saying. We're talking about what is God saying to you during the time that I'm either reading His Word or preaching the points that God has highlighted to me. What has He been saying to you specifically? And the third question is this: what are you going to do about it? Because the question of answering what am I going to do about this is all about how am I going to respond to God's prompting on my life. Is God talking to me about what Pastor Johnny's saying today and talking about this guy Elijah today? Is he talking to me about that? Is he talking to me about something in my community? Is he talking to me about something in my life and my walk with Him? What action am I going to take to respond to His prompting? The last question that Chelsea and I always want you to know is, how can we help you? How can we help you with your walk? If God's put something on your heart for something for you to take action, or you're not sure what action to take, but He's put something on your heart, will you reach out to us? We want to help you to grow in your relationship, just like we want to grow in ours daily. So those are the questions to think about as we're opening up His Word this morning, and we're going to be talking about a guy named Elijah. Because for all of 2020, we've been talking about testimonies of different historical figures in the Bible that we meet and their relationship with God. Most of the time we talk about how they met God, before they met God, and when they met Him, the calling that He put on their life, and then maybe their response and their transformation years where they learn and grow, and then a lot of times we just look at their legacy. Today we've got a guy named Elijah we're looking at, And we're just going to grab some lessons from his life, from a couple major experiences that really affected things for him and his relationship with God. And I'm going to read those. And it's quite a bit of reading today. So, hey, how about a trivia question? We've been doing a trivia question every week, right? So here's today's trivia question. Talking about Elijah. Now, his name is Elijah, or Elijah, however you want to say that. After him, to become the prophet, was a guy named Elisha. We're going to talk about him next week. So, in anticipation of next week, in anticipation of talking about back-to-back prophets, here's the trivia question. Was Elisha Elijah's son? Hopefully we'll find out in the sermon today. If not, you might have to wait till next week to find out. Oh man, this is how you keep your online services going, right? All right, so keep that in mind. What's your answer? Was Elisha Elijah's son? Okay, so let me give you a little background on Elijah. So Elijah, and you might hear me say Elijah or Elijah. It's a hard word to say, but it's not Elisha. That's a different guy. We're going to hear about him next week. But Elijah, and I'm going to try and say just so it's easy to understand. He was known as Elijah the Tishbite, which basically meant he was from a place called Tishbe in Gilead. Just like if I was back in old times, you would call me Johnny the San Franciscan or Johnny the San Franciscite, because I was born in San Francisco. I wasn't raised there, but I was born there. So you would identify my town of origin. So that's who he is. He's Elijah the Tishbite because he's from Tishbe in a place called Gilead. First time we hear about him is in 1 Kings chapter 17. And he just kind of comes up on the scene, and it says he goes and he meets with the king at the time, and he basically walks right up to the king and says, yeah, there's going to be no water, there's going to be a drought for the next few years. No water, no rain, no dew. And then exit stage left. He's out of the situation. Now, we don't know anything about him before this, but he had to have had quite a ministry going as a prophet of the Lord at this point, because he's able to speak directly to the king. He's able to just speak right in his life, and he's already known by name. And so he makes you wonder, well, why in the world would this prophet just walk up to the king at the time and say that? Well, it really begs the question, who is that king? Well, God clearly instructed him to say that because this king was a guy named King Ahab. And King Ahab was one bad dude. Not only that, King Ahab was married to a woman named Jezebel, and she was one bad dudette. And these two you could easily call an evil kings because they didn't follow God. They probably told people they followed God to a certain degree, but they also followed a false god named Baal and a false god named Asherah. And those two religions, those false gods of people, had terrible, terrible things that people would do. Terrible things like offering your children up for sacrifices, cutting yourself and spilling your blood to appease the gods. We're going to hear a little bit about that in one of the stories I'm going to read. So these were an evil couple that was in charge and ruling, and God is not happy. And he sent Elijah to tell him, yeah, there's going to be a drought in the land for a few years, not weeks or months, a few years. So then he just goes on his way. They're upset, but he goes on his way and he does his prophet thing. And we even hear a story about him raising a boy from the dead. So God was clearly with him, doing amazing things through his life. And then we read that several years later, he goes back to Ahab, King Ahab. That's where we're going to pick up the story today and grab some lessons from his life. And there's a lot. You could pick a lot from before and even a lot after, but we're going to focus on one specific time period in his life. So let me read to you from 1 Kings chapter 18. We're going to look at verses 16 through 40. So it's kind of a big chunk of reading, so follow along with me. But Elijah has now come back to King Ahab after there's been a drought in the land and no water for 3 years. This is what it says in verse 16 of 1 Kings chapter 18. So Obadiah went to tell Ahab that Elijah had come, and Ahab went out to meet Elijah. When Ahab saw him, he exclaimed, "Is it really you, you troublemaker of Israel?" "I've made no trouble for Israel," Elijah replied. "You and your family are the troublemakers, for you have refused to obey the commandments of the Lord and have worshipped the images of Baal instead. Now summon all Israel to join me at Mount Carmel, along with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who are supported by Jezebel." So Ahab summoned all the people of Israel and the prophets to Mount Carmel. Then Elijah stood in front of them and said, "How much longer will you waver, hobbling between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him." But the people were completely silent. Then Elijah said to him, "I am the only prophet of the Lord who is left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Now bring 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal may choose whichever one they wish, and cut it into pieces, and lay it on the wood of their altar, but without setting fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood on the altar, but not set fire to it. Then call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by setting fire to the wood is the true God." And all the people agreed. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "You go first, for there are many of you. Choose one of the bulls and prepare it and call on the name of your God, but do not set fire to the wood." So they prepared one of the bulls and placed it on the altar. They called on the name of Baal from morning until noontime, shouting, "O Baal, answer us." But there was no reply of any kind. Then they danced, hobbling around the altar they had made. About noontime, Elijah began mocking them. "You'll have to shout louder," he scoffed, "for surely he is a god. Perhaps he is daydreaming or is relieving himself. Or maybe he is away on a trip or is asleep and needs to be wakened." So they shouted louder, and following their normal custom, they cut themselves with knives and swords until the blood gushed out. They raved all afternoon until the time of the evening sacrifice, but still there was no sound, no reply, no response. Then Elijah called on to the people, "Come over here." They all crowded around him as he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been torn down. He took 12 stones, one to represent each of the tribes of Israel, and he used the stones to rebuild the altar in the name of the Lord. Then he dug a trench around the altar large enough to hold about 3 gallons. He piled wood on the altar, cut the bull into pieces, and laid the pieces on the wood. Then he said, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour the water over the offering and the wood." After they had done this, he said, "Do the same thing again." And when they were finished, he said, "Now do it a 3rd time." So they did as he said, and the water ran around the altar and even filled the trench. At the usual time for offering the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet walked up to the altar and prayed, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are God of Israel and that I am your servant. Prove that I have done all this at your command. O Lord, answer me. Answer me so that these people will know that you, O Lord, are God and you have brought them back to yourself." Immediately, the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven and burned up the young bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up all the water in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell face down on the ground and cried out, "The Lord, he is God. Yes, the Lord is God." Then Elijah commanded, "Seize all the prophets of Baal. Don't let a single one escape." So the people seized them all, and Elijah took them down to the Kishon Valley and killed them there. Wow. This is a powerful story. This is one of my favorite stories in the Bible to read. This is incredible. So let's talk about lessons from Elijah's journey with God. And let's grab a huge lesson out of this one right now. First lesson for us to look at today. It's this. Elijah trusted God and he saw miracles. You know, I mentioned to you before that in the chapter before this, I didn't read it out loud, Elijah raised a boy from the dead. So clearly he had put his trust in God. Clearly God was working through him and he had already been doing miracles. But when we read this story, we see nothing short of a miracle. Nothing short of a miracle at all because of how he did it and set it up so that no one could doubt who God was and where true miracles come from. And the key verse here for us in our understanding to grab this lesson about how Elijah trusted God is in verse 21 of that 1 Kings chapter 18. When he's in front of all the people of Israel. And it says that Ahab summoned all the people of Israel. If you know me, you know I love absolutes in the Bible. I love it when I hear the words all or none or every, because make no mistake about it, when God says all, he meant every single member of Israel, all the Israelites, the Jewish people were all there watching this thing. And what happens? Elijah gets in front of them and he gives them this question. He says to them, verse 21, then Elijah stood in front of them and said, how much longer will you waver, hobbling between the two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him. But the people were completely silent. Elijah can't be any more clear. He says, make the call. I used to have a boss who used to say this saying to people when there was two options to go. He said, all right, call the ball. You call the ball. Call the ball. And the reason why you would say that is because in sports, like in baseball, when there's a pop fly and two people are going for it, someone has to make a decision. And that's the person who calls the ball and says, I got it. It's mine. Some sports you'll hear people say mine or me, go, me, go, me, go. You'll hear different things, whether it's volleyball, whatever, baseball, anything like that. People where there's two people going for it, they'll use different terminology, but they've got to call the ball. Elijah is standing in front of all the people of Israel and he says, make the call. Who are you going to put your faith in? Will it be the Lord your God or this other guy Baal? Make a decision. Is the Lord God or is it Baal? Make your call and follow him. And it says that all the people were silent. The only person who wasn't silent that was Jewish that day was Elijah, who clearly said, I know who the Lord is, and I trust in him completely. Elijah put his trust in God, and then he saw an unbelievable miracle happen in front of his face. And I mean, can you imagine the pressure? He's up there in front, the evil king, the evil queen, they hate him, they want him dead, there's been a drought, they blame him, they hate him, they can't stand him. He's calling them out. He's in front of all the Israelite people who probably aren't very happy about not having water for the last 3 years, by the way. They can't be too excited at that moment. And he's in front of 850 priests of the false gods that other people serve. And you know that none of those guys like him either. And that crowd is wild and rowdy. That crowd is doing these dances and shouting out for hours on end, getting worked up as they're trying to call on their God to burn up the bull and show the people that Baal truly is God, which they fail at. And halfway in, they start to get even more incensed and they start cutting themselves with knives and swords and letting their blood flow. This is not something that God desires us to do. He doesn't want us to hurt our bodies and pour our blood out for him. That's what Jesus did for us. Blood is important to God. That's why Jesus' blood covers our sins. That's another sermon for another day, but just to understand, I mean, you wonder why people hurt themselves and we realize that they're confused or following a false god. You hear about a lot of people who get into the act of cutting and it becomes an addiction because it's this thing where they have this release and they're drawing blood from their body, and that's not what God would have. And these people, these priests, are cutting themselves with knives and swords and spilling their blood in the name of their false god. They do it all day long. And they get a little bit more incensed in the afternoon because Elijah starts talking smack in the beginning of it. He goes, you need to shout louder. Your God can't hear you. He says maybe he's relieving himself. He actually says maybe your God is actually going to the bathroom right now. And he says maybe he's on a trip or he's asleep. He's talking smack. It's one of the few times in the Bible you see people like talking smack and it's actually, it would be okay with God in this. I got to tell you, in my own personal experience, every time I try and talk smack in life, I lose. If I'm playing a game, if I'm playing a sport, if I'm just making fun of somebody, it always costs me. And that's what God uses to try and keep me humble when I start getting out of line. But in this case, God's fine with it because those people need to know that their God doesn't exist. He's not real. He is not the God. And so Elijah talks smack. He does all these things. And then God delivers this miracle. Fire from heaven. Now look, we had some cool lightning and thunder last week. I saw an awesome video on Facebook of a palm tree here in East Marysville that caught fire and was burning. So clearly you can have lightning that comes down from the sky and catch things on fire. I get that. This is not mere lightning. This says this is the fire of God that came down. And what does it do? It doesn't just catch something on fire. it fully engulfs and incinerates the bull that was up there for sacrifice. Not only that, it incinerates the stones that were up there set up, and the dirt, and every bit of water in there. If things are wet, they don't catch on fire, right? That's why Elijah says, bring all that water, pour it all over this meat, pour it all in this trench around it, pour it all over the wood. Those of you who are camping this weekend and are watching this later, or maybe you go camping all the time, how many of you pour water on your wood before you light it on fire? Now, I can't really see through the camera, but I'm pretty sure that all your hands are down right now, right? You don't pour water on the thing you want to burn. You don't pour water on the thing that has to catch fire. You might put water all around it to keep the fire from spreading, but when the fire of God comes down, that is an absolute miracle from God, and engulfs and incinerates that offering, and stones and dirt and the water, you know this is not a lightning strike that is random. This is a miracle of God as he answers Elijah, as Elijah says, show him right now that you are God. And he does it. And all of this happens because Elijah put his trust in God first. He stood in front of those people and said, choose today. Who's it going to be? Is it God or is it Baal? Make your call. But I choose God, and I'm going to show you my trust is 100% in God, and I'm willing to come in front of everybody I know and all the opposition and prove it. And God delivers an absolute miracle. I mean, it's just an incredible miracle and victory that happens. And he has victory, and all those false priests are slaughtered because that's how they did. And if you weren't with God, you weren't going to survive. And he's got this huge victory, and this has got to be the high point for Elijah in his life. I mean, he's already raised somebody from the dead, but here he's had victory over all of Israel, and God has done it. And it's just this incredible moment. And then the story changes a little bit. If we read along in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 to 10, and in between, by the way, before we get to 1 Kings 19, Elijah then prays for rain, and the rain comes, and the drought is over, and everyone's excited. You know, everything's going his way. But then the story changes in 1 Kings chapter 19. It changes in a major way. Let me read for you from 1 Kings 19, verses 1 through 10. When Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you killed them. Whew. Wow. Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he lay down and slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, get up and eat. He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him and said, get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. There he came to a cave where he spent the night. But the Lord said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah replied, I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty, but the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. We're going to pause right there. We'll pick up the rest of the story in just a few minutes. But what a change in scenery, what a change in thought process, what a difference in mental outlook. Elijah, who's just had arguably one of the greatest victories in the Bible, has now got a message from a woman named Jezebel, Ahab's wife, saying that she's going to come after him and kill him. And as we read, Elijah comes before God and says, I'm done and I got nothing left and I'm too tired, Lord. And then after he travels, after the Lord sustained him, God asks him, what are you doing here? And he says, I'm the last one left and now they're trying to kill me and I'm done. And the lesson for us to grab here comes in the communication between Elijah and God. And the communication is this. Elijah was honest with his doubts to God. He was honest with his doubts to God. What did he have to fear? He's just defeated 850 priests that are wild and crazy guys that have swords and knives and don't like him. He's just trumped over the king. He's just shown all Israel who God is. He's raised people from the dead in his life. What does he have to fear? One woman he's scared of. There's a lot of good jokes here. I'm going to pass on those right now. I think you know where I'm going. I'm having fun here today. But one woman. He's defeated all of her false priests. He's defeated everything in his path, and he did it in front of all of Israel. And truly it was God who did it through him, but everyone's giving him the credit. So why is he doubting now? Because of one evil woman who has declared that she is going to track him down and kill him. And you know what? This evil woman, she pays for it in the end. She gets hers from God later on. That's a different story. Her name is Jezebel. You know, I used to like that name quite a bit. And when Chelsea and I started talking about having kids after we had come to faith in the Lord, I read this name in the Bible. And I said, I really like that name. We should, if we have a daughter, we should name our daughter Jezebel. Some of you are shaking your head right now at home, and that's exactly what my wife said. She said, there is no way we are naming our daughter Jezebel. And I was like, but it's such a pretty name. It's kind of spicy. I didn't really have a grip on how terrible of a person Jezebel in the Bible was. And I apologize if there's anyone at home watching whose name is Jezebel. I am not talking about you. But I thought it'd be a cool name, and my wife said, no way, no how. And then a friend of mine said, hey, you could always name your daughter Jessica Isabel and then call her Jezebel for short. And I mentioned that to Chelsea, and then we knew we were not going to name our daughter Jessica Isabel. That was not going to happen. But not too long after that, we got some birds. And I said, can we name the bird Jezebel? And Chelsea said, yeah, you can name that bird Jezebel. And I was like, cool. That bird was evil. That bird made shrieking noises at all times of the day that were not pleasing the ear. That bird bit everything and cost us money and attacked people and attacked other birds. That bird was so evil that it was one of the only animals that Chelsea and I actually had to give away because we could not handle it. And we've had a lot of animals in our time. And the person we gave it to said, hey, you know what? I can handle troubled animals. And they took that bird, and after several months, they gave that bird away too. That bird was evil. I will never name anything Jezebel in my life after that experience, I'll tell you what. And this Jezebel is far more evil than just a loud, biting bird. This one had some teeth to her, so much so that Elijah says, I'm done for. She's coming after me. Even though he's seen the power of God save him in front of all of Israel, in front of 850 other men, with knives and swords and all that, and he says, I got nothing left. I can't do anything else. And he's low at that point, and he admits it to God. And this is a long period of honesty with God, because he goes and he lays down to that tree after kind of wandering in the wilderness a little bit, and he's just ready to die. I mean, he even drops his servant off somewhere else because he just wants to go and die. He's done. He's in terrible depression, really. And God sends an angel who gives him some food and strengthens him. He says, you got a journey ahead of you. And it's easy to overlook that sentence when it says that he traveled for 40 days and 40 nights. It's a long way to go. Goes all the way from where he was at Mount Carmel at one point, makes his way to Mount Sinai, what they call the Mountain of the Lord, the place that God appeared to Moses, gave him the commandments, gave him all the rules and decrees for all of Israel. Mount Sinai. And he climbs up, and he finds a cave, and he goes to sleep. And when God awakes him, he says, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah said, doesn't say it in the Bible, but you know he just said, big sigh before. He says, I fought the good fight. I served you as much as I could. but the people of Israel aren't following you. They're full of sin. When I asked them who they were going to choose, they were silent. And now they're trying to kill me even after this great victory where I showed that you were God. Lord, I'm just done and broken. You ever been that low after having such a great high in your life? And I'm not talking about a high of drugs or alcohol. I'm talking about feeling great and having success in life and things going great and wonderful, and then something knocks you down and it just feels like you've fallen so far. Elijah's right there with you. But the lesson for us is that he is honest with his doubts with God, because he really is. God has just shown him and everybody in Israel God's power. That Elijah has nothing to fear, but he's like, I can't, I'm done, I just don't have anything left, Lord, and she's coming after me and they want to kill me and I just can't do it. And instead of saying, Lord, I know that you can strengthen me, Lord, I know that you can have victory, Lord, I know I can trust in you, he's saying, God, I just don't think I can do it anymore. And he shares his doubts with God. What a lesson for us. Because whether Elijah said it out loud or not, God would know his heart and his feelings. And whether we admit to God when we're struggling or not, he can see when we are. So why not just take the lesson from Elijah and just share our doubts with God and say, God, I just don't know how to go on in this situation. I don't know how to keep pushing through. I don't know how to react. I don't know what to do. I just have doubts in myself and doubts. Lord, I even have a doubt in your plan. I don't get it. Because when we share and open up with God like that, he reveals some amazing things to us. This is not the end of Elijah's story. We paused mid-chapter and really mid-life for Elijah. But God answers him. And God really answers him. And it comes in the next several verses. Same chapter 19 of 1 Kings. Verses 11 through 16 say this. Remember, God just asked Elijah, why are you here, Elijah? And Elijah says, I'm the last one left and they want to kill me and I'm done and they're bad people. And this is what happens next. God speaking. Go out and stand before me on the mountain, the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in it. The wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And a voice said, What are you doing here, Elijah? He replied again, I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty. But the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. Then the Lord told him, Go back the same way you came and travel to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive there, anoint Hazael to be king of Aram. Then anoint Jehu, grandson of Nimshi, to be the king of Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaput, from the town of Abel Meholah, to replace you as my prophet. Interesting response. By the way, did you just catch something there? Elisha, who would be the next prophet, was not Elijah's son at all. He was a man that God chose, and we'll talk about him next week. But the lesson here for us, remember the first lesson that we talked about today? The first lesson was that Elijah trusted God and saw miracles. And the second lesson was that Elijah was honest with his doubts with God. And now God responds to him. And the lesson for us to grab is this. Elijah experienced a deeper relationship with God. He did, truly. And it was in that process. That's his testimony. If he was sharing with someone, man, I trusted in God and saw miracles. And then I was really honest. And I expressed my doubts with God, and then I experienced a deeper relationship with God. Because God asked him the same question twice. The first time he asks it, he asks him before he really reveals himself. He says, What are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah says, I'm the last prophet. Everyone else is dead. They're going to kill me. They're bad people. But then God asked him that question for him to think about. Then God shows him something absolutely incredible. And after that experience, he says, what are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here, Elijah? Same question, didn't change. And Elijah has the same answer, but God's answer is, yeah, not going to pay attention to that. Here's what you're going to do. Go back the same way you came. Start anointing people. Anoint the next king. Anoint the next prophet. Anoint the next thing. Because Elijah, the reason you're here is because we are in relationship together. And I have chosen you to do this ministry. And you are going to do it. And you are going to succeed because I will be with you. And this is the plan I have laid out for your life. And it is at that moment that Elijah goes into a much deeper relationship with God than he ever has before. Even before when he raised people from the dead. Even before when he stood in front of all of Israel and declared that the Lord is God. Now he has experienced a deeper relationship because he has seen and heard things that no one else has ever seen and heard. He has stood on the mountain where God told him to go and watched as the wind came and shook that mountain and rocks fell. As this earthquake came and shook that mountain. As this giant fire raged. And then the gentle whisper comes. Elijah couldn't hear God in the midst of the storm. He couldn't see him and he couldn't hear him in the midst of the windstorm, the earthquake, or the fire. But when things settled down, and there was no more distractions, Elijah could clearly hear the gentle whisper of God speaking to him. And he knew who it was, and he responded. You might be in the middle of a storm of life right now and feel like you can't hear God. Hang on. The mountain might be shaking, the rocks might be crumbling, the wind might be coming against, the fire might be raging, and I'm not talking about the physical fires outside, I'm talking about whatever situation might be going on in your life right now, and if it's not happening right now, at some point it probably will. And you might feel like you can't hear God, and you don't know what's going on, and you might be low, and you might not know what to do. Hang on until the storm passes, and wait and listen for the quiet, gentle whisper of the Lord. A friend of mine the other day said that he finds that when he can get out in places and out in nature and it's quiet, he can hear God and Holy Spirit better. And he says he wishes God would shout it sometimes so it'd be easier to hear, but God typically doesn't do that to us. And it's just an incredible, incredible thing because Elijah hears the silent whisper of God. A great mentor of mine and a fellow pastor named John Shepherd. Everybody called him Pastor Shep. Some of you in the church, at our church, know him. He was a pastor over a decade ago at New Beginnings, and he pastored Methodist churches and other Wesleyan churches in the area, and was a great man of God, and he was a mentor of mine. And he shared a story with me just a couple months before he died and went to be with the Lord. He had terrible physical problems, all kinds of issues. I'd have to write a list to go over them all. But there was one point where he was in the hospital and he was being taken care of again because his internal organs were not doing well. Things were shutting down. And he needed a nurse for something. He needed some medication or something. I'm not sure what he needed the nurse for, but he needed a nurse. And he woke up out of his sleep and he knew he needed the nurse and he reached out for his call button. You know when you're at a hospital, they put that big thing on the bed next to you and you push it and you can talk into it and you can get your nurse to come. You talk to the nurse's station. It's the call button. And he reached out for it and it wasn't there. And at that point, he could only move one of his arms just a little bit. He couldn't get out of bed. He couldn't go anywhere else. He couldn't do anything. There was nobody else in the room with him. Just quiet in what he was dealing with. And he thought to himself, who do you call when you can't find the call button? Shep told me this story. And he told me that when he said to himself, who you call when you can't find the call button, he heard the still quiet whisper of God say, "You can always call on me, my child." And it was a special moment for him. And I'm so glad that he shared that story with me, because it reminded me that there's going to be times where I need to get through the storm, where I need to just hold on to be able to hear that still quiet whisper of God and that instruction. Elijah heard that, and he went out and did those things, and he renewed his trust in God, and he renewed his faith in God, and went out and did all those things, and did many more miracles, and then anointed a guy named Elisha that we're going to talk about next week, who did even more miracles. And there's a neat story behind that too. There's a lot to Elijah's life, and we didn't go through it all today, but there's 3 lessons that we talked about that are like a mini roadmap for us. And this happens a lot in church. You hear these things. It's like, I do these 3 things in your life, will be successful. I'm not going to write a book. I'm not going to tell you that, but let's just grab the lessons we learned from Elijah's life and apply them to our own. The first one is this. Elijah trusted in God and saw miracles. Maybe it's time that we put our trust in God and saw some real miracles happen in our life, through us and around us. And we can credit God and God alone for those. Elijah was honest with God about his doubts. Look, everyone has doubts sometimes. Everyone has low points. Everyone experiences things. And when we are honest with our doubts with God, boy, does it lead to something else. Because for Elijah and for us, the 3rd lesson can be the same. That we can grow into a deeper relationship with God. Once that honesty, that relationship, that transparency is there, we may have been like Elijah and trusted in God and seen miracles in our life, and maybe we've hit low point, and if we are honest with God about our doubts and what we're going through, there's no reason that we can't experience the same thing Elijah saw and get a greater, deeper relationship with the Lord. Elijah's story should speak to all of us today. And if you've been there and trusted in God and seen miracles and went through low points, and then came out with it with a deeper experience with God, and it's time for you to share your testimony so the church can hear. We've been talking about this for a few weeks. We want to hear your testimony so you can help others grow in their walks. Will you reach out to us this week and share your testimony? And if you are at that point where you're having trouble expressing your doubts to God, or in that phase, or maybe you're on the upswing, would you just share your testimony with us? Your testimony is never complete. We don't get to hear your whole testimony until after you're dead, believe it or not. But your testimony is a live, active, living story that's going on, and we want to hear where you're at. Did you just put your trust in God for the first time? We want to hear it. We want to share it. Have you been going through a low point and you're just starting to be honest with God? We want to hear it. We want to share it. And have you come to a spot where you're deeper experience with God than you've ever had before? We want to hear it. We want to share it so other people can grow in their relationship too. I would encourage you to share your testimony with someone this week, and please reach out to us and share your testimony with us so we can share it with others. Hey, next week, I don't know if we're going to be in person or all online. It really depends on what happens this week in our area. So please pray for our firefighters. Please pray against the lightning and the storms that we're going to have today, that they won't cause any more fires, as our resources are spread pretty thin across the state right now. Pray for those things. And by the way, I just want to mention, next Saturday, Say Love is doing a river bottoms cleanup where we're going to be towing out a whole bunch of cars and vehicles. So if you have a truck and a trailer, or have a trailer available, will you contact me this week? It's going to be a great time of getting some old metal out of the river bottoms and get them recycled and start to help to clean up that area and make it look a little nicer so that those waterways can be safer and better looking. That's completely aside from Elijah's story, but I did want to share it with all of you because I forgot to earlier. Hey, love you all. So glad you joined us today for our online service. May God bless you this week as you go out and put your trust in the Lord, see His miracles, be honest with Him, and grow in a deeper relationship with Him. God bless you.